Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc are going to be one of the most intriguing driver lineups to watch in 2021, with Ferrari themselves hoping to bounce back after a shocking 2020 season. Getting one of the most solid midfield drivers in Sainz and pairing him with Leclerc, who himself in my opinion is one of the top 3 drivers on the grid, should be a recipe for success. However, whilst on paper this lineup looks to be one of the best on the field, heading into the 2021 season, I have to admit, something to me just doesn't feel right. I'm feeling more nervous than excited about this pairing, and it will be interesting to see how Ferrari will perform in the post-Vettel era. So in this video, I'm going to be looking at both the Ferrari and the Carlos Sainz viewpoint and talking about why I've got these doubts in my mind and why, to me, I don't really understand the move in the long term for Carlos Sainz. Now, before I get into the Carlos Sainz aspect of things, I want to talk about how this move affects Ferrari. Now, the signing of Leclerc in 2019 and now Sainz in 2021 shows a real shift in the team's driver philosophy. I mean, it was only 2 seasons ago that Ferrari had the oldest driver lineup on the grid with Vettel and Raikkonen, and now fast forward just 2 and a bit years later, and now with Leclerc and Sainz for 2021, they have the youngest ever driver pairing in the team's history. As far as the lineup itself, me personally, when the Vettel news was announced last year and it became very clear that the choice was going to be between Carlos Sainz and Daniel Ricciardo, I genuinely thought that Ricciardo was not only the better driver and more harmonious option in terms of not having a massive ego and being a very relaxed character, but overall I just thought that he was the better choice for Ferrari due to his speed and also the experience of being part of a race-winning team, which Ferrari would be lacking with Carlos Sainz. In the end though, Ferrari went with Sainz, and don't get me wrong, of course, regardless of who they would have signed, they're both great drivers, so the team would have won either way. And when you compare Sainz and Vettel relative to how they did in 2020 and maybe even 2019 as well, Vettel clearly wasn't performing anywhere near his best, so the combination of Leclerc and Sainz greatly improves their driver lineup, and to be honest, they easily have one of the best lineups on the field in terms of individual quality. As far as what Carlos brings as an individual, well, in terms of off the track, he is definitely someone that gets very involved in the car's development, and especially at McLaren, lots of people have said that he became very closely involved with the engineers and prided himself on working as closely as he could and understanding everything that goes into the car's development. On top of that, he also became a great leader at McLaren and was well suited to coping with the pressure of having to deliver as the #1 driver. And if we know anything about Ferrari, the pressure is more like times 10 compared to pretty much every single other team. As a person, he is also very familiar with working for an Italian team from his time with Toro Rosso, and he also speaks fluent Italian, so the integration of getting him into the team, getting him comfortable and communicating to the people around him should be fairly simple, which is a massive bonus, especially with all of the restrictions and a shortened preseason. Now, as far as on the track, I mean, the results, they speak for themselves. At McLaren, he really found himself as a driver, as he went from being a solid midfield driver at Toro Rosso and Renault to a completely different caliber of driver. And although qualifying pace is definitely something that he still needs to work on, especially going up against Leclerc, on a Sunday, Sainz is honestly one of the most consistent and dependable drivers on the grid, scoring points in almost every single race he finished in 2020, being a real expert when the conditions get wet, and when unforeseen opportunities arise in races, he is just as capable as anyone else at grabbing them and being able to deliver podiums like he did in Monza. In fact, in that race, Sainz was closing in on Gasly, and given a lap or 2 more, he might have been able to grab his first win in Formula 1. So to quickly sum up the Ferrari side, to me this is a win-win-win-win-win situation. For the next 2 years, they get a fresh start or a new chapter for the team. They've clearly been investing heavily in young drivers with a new driver philosophy going forward. And for 2021, they have a quality driver pairing with 2 solid and consistent drivers that will deliver them top-level performances. Now they just need to get their heads down, focus on improving the power unit, which is absolutely critical to their success going forward, and focusing most, if not all of their design energy into the 2022 aero regulations to make sure that they set themselves up in the best way possible for a potential title push in 2022. However, it's not quite all sunshines and rainbows in my opinion. There is still something that bugs me, and there is something in the back of my mind that I'm struggling to put my finger on. I mean, I totally see why for Ferrari this is a great situation for the next 2 years until Sainz's contract runs out, at which point they can then kind of reassess and reevaluate if things need to be changed. But what bugged me all throughout 2020 is this really the best situation for Carlos Sainz to be in? And in the long term, did he make a mistake leaving McLaren? Now, we have to remember that when Carlos and Ferrari were negotiating, and even up until Carlos was announced as Vettel's replacement, the 2020 season hadn't yet started, but we had already finished preseason testing at Barcelona. Now, what part did that have to play in everything, given the fact that at that specific point, although Ferrari didn't look amazing in preseason testing, at the time they were still theoretically the second best team on the grid, going off the back of 2019. The next thing that bugs me about Sainz's move to Ferrari is the fact that he is stepping into Leclerc's team, who himself had just spent the past 2 years trying to take over and build the team around him by basically single-handedly kicking out a 4-time world champion. Now, look, I'm sure Sainz, like all drivers, believes that he is the best on the grid, as he should, but why would you want to step into an environment like Ferrari with where they are now, and especially then have to go up against a driver as good as Leclerc, who is easily a future world champion and arguably at worst is the third best driver on the grid behind Hamilton and Verstappen? To me, it just seems unnecessary is probably the best word I can use to describe that situation, especially given the fact that the team Sainz would be leaving was his team, the team that he had just spent the last 2 years building around himself. That's probably the biggest head scratcher to me. Sainz at McLaren was the guy. Lando no doubt was improving every single year and was definitely pushing Carlos all the time, which is great because that is exactly what you want from your teammate. But I also think that in the back of Carlos's mind, he was comfortable with Lando. He knew that even though Lando is very quick in quali, he had the edge on him when it counts on a Sunday. And that's the thing, the difference between those two in 2020 was just 8 points. But the midfield is so ridiculously close these days that those 8 points was the difference between Sainz finishing in 6th and Lando finishing in 9th. Now, some people might say that Lando is going to continue to improve and get better and maybe would have overtook him in 2021, and sure, that definitely could have been a reality, but what makes you look at an improving Norris and think to yourself, no, I think I'd rather go up against Charles Leclerc instead? The next thing that makes me skeptical is the structure of the team and the management. Now, there's already been lots of talks from the people who actually own the team that Ferrari is changing and that they are going through a transitional phase. And when it comes to Matteo Binotto, look, I've already said that me personally, unlike most fans, I would not drop him as the team principal yet, because he backed Leclerc fully throughout 2019 and 2020, and he deserves, in my opinion, another year to see how well his new look Ferrari team performs in 2021. However, I also think that if we get to the end of 2021 and Ferrari don't show any signs of improvement, and there is yet another civil war and tension between the drivers and the management, then I do think that his time should be up as team principal, and he should be put into a position that he'd be more suited to. And on the subject of Binotto and his leadership style is the fact that before Carlos has even turned a wheel in his 2021 car, he's already bigging up Ferrari young drivers like Mick Schumacher and talking about them hopefully being in a Ferrari in the very near future. And don't get me wrong, that's the exact kind of encouragement that you want to hear as a potential future Ferrari driver. And for Ferrari, they are in a great situation, as I've been saying, having a quality lineup for the next 2 years. And if things do need to be changed, then they've got Mick Schumacher, who Ferrari and Binotto are already heavily pushing as a future Ferrari driver, and that's not even mentioning the likes of Robert Schwartzman and Callum Eilert, who also potentially by then might be ready to at least give Ferrari something to think about. However, if I was Carlos Sainz, I would be going into a new team with this strange feeling that the team is already backing a young driver and looking for my replacement before I've even sat in the 2021 car. So, despite all of my doubts, why did Sainz decide to go to Ferrari? Well, I think it comes down to one thing, and that is getting even the slightest opportunity to be able to win and fight for championships with Ferrari, which I am sure is a feeling that just can't be matched even if you win with another team. Something that has stuck with me about Ferrari is something that Alonso said back in 2012 when he was driving for the team. He said, at Ferrari, when things go well, everything is exaggerated, and when things go bad, everything is dramatic. And he is right. In fact, things have only become increasingly more exaggerated and increasingly more dramatic the longer Ferrari have gone without winning a title. And there's no doubt that in the last decade, they did come close at times. In 2010, Alonso had a chance at the title in the final race of the season, but that classic Ferrari master plan got in the way as he was put on the wrong strategy and spent pretty much all of the race behind the Renault of Vitaly Petrov. 2012 to me is not even really worth mentioning because it was less to do with Ferrari building a good car and more to do with Alonso being able to take pretty much anything to a title decider. And then in 2017 and 2018, whilst they did have good cars, Vettel and Ferrari just couldn't match the levels of on and off track performance and consistency that Hamilton and Mercedes were capable of over the course of the whole season. But Ferrari as a team is so special that whoever that driver is that delivers them their first driver's title since 2007, whether it's Leclerc, Sainz or someone else, they will be a Ferrari legend instantly as the driver who is able to bring back the glory days to the most famous team in Formula 1. Maybe that allure of the prancing Cavallino and the opportunity to be that driver was just too much for Sainz, and in the end, despite all of their recent struggles both on and off the track, to put it lightly, when Ferrari come calling, how do you say no to Ferrari? Again, all of this is just conjecture, random skepticisms in my head that may turn out to be completely false, and I want to reiterate, Leclerc and Sainz on a purely individual talent level is easily one of the best lineups on the grid, and maybe these two hungry drivers will actually turn out to be the perfect combination to each other that just can't be matched, and Ferrari can begin their resurgence. But even in that perfect scenario for Ferrari, we've seen what happens between two equally competitive drivers at the team not too long ago, and it ended up with one of the drivers not only angry, but also very quickly without a seat. And I just can't shake the feeling that there's too much spicy chili in this lineup, and that when things are great and there is a chance for wins and to get one over on the other teammate, one of them is going to end up being disappointed, and in most scenarios, that driver will be Carlos Sainz. He's not come to Ferrari to play number 2 to Leclerc, he's come there to win titles, and I've just got a bad feeling that he's going to be very, very disappointed. Well guys, there you go. That is my video on the Sainz Leclerc Ferrari triangle. Now let me know in the comments below, do you share my skepticism or do you think I'm talking absolute rubbish and this is a match made in heaven? This is exactly what Ferrari need to return back to the top. Again, let me know your thoughts in the comments box below, and if you did enjoy this video then don't forget to drop a like and smash that subscribe button as well. And guys, I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.